Hey, everybody, this is Rick Lewis coming to you from Matthew Gray's podcast. And Matthew and I just had the most fabulous one-sided conversation I think I've ever had because he's such a good listener and such a wonderful presence that he had me just talking his ear off for an hour with some fun stories and some really interesting things that I think you should join us for. Sunny day in the Pacific Northwest, so I can't complain about that.
Oh, fantastic. If you could complain, how would you complain about a sunny day in the Pacific Northwest?
Oh, it hurts my eyes. It's so bright. There's too much snow and the mountains reflecting the light.
Now, what about all those people who suffer from what they call seasonal disorder? The only sad that I'm aware of is the SAD diet, the standard American diet.
Oh, now I hadn't heard that acronym for SAD, but my wife has the seasonal affective disorder. Sunshine makes her really happy.
Oh, yeah. So when it's not sunny, is she wearing one of those like miner's caps with a little lamp pointing down at her
No,
face?
no, she has this panel. It's a light panel. And
Uh-huh.
she gets up early and she sits in front of it for 45 minutes every morning because it actually really helps her whatever the chemistry, the neurochemistry to get exposure to the light.
So people who suffer from that can kind of recharge like a battery by sitting in front of a panel, whereas not
Yeah,
wearing the hat throughout the entire day. That sounds kind of weird anyway, but that's how it
yeah,
gets done.
yeah. That's how it gets done.
Wow. And so you've escaped that. You're not from there, I guess, originally. Is she?
No, neither of us are originally. I grew up all over the US. In fact, I have lived in 36 different homes in 64 years.
Okay, so 36 different homes and addresses. So are you on the run or what's your story?
Yeah, I am on the run. Only it's from me. It's from my own authority, not from the formal authorities. No, my dad was a teacher, so he moved around a lot. Had a bunch of teaching jobs when we were growing up, and then by the time I was 15, 16, I was working as an actor or entertainer, and the performing life has led me far and wide, all over the place.
Now, if you were put to the test, Rick, how many of those 36 addresses could you come up with in, let's say, a 5 minute brainstorming session?
Most of them, the vast
Is
majority of them.
is that right?
Yeah.
I can't even remember my last address. How do you do that?
Well, this is interesting segue because as you know, I do a lot of writing. That's how you and I met, is on Substack. And my writing is all story based. It's all personal life experiences. And so I spent a lot of time reviewing those life experiences. And part of that review process is, okay, where was I when this happened? I actually have a app that I built last year. It's called All My Stories. It's a story inventory tool. So it helps you to recall and remember and record these notable, significant life memories. And so it's something I spend a fair amount of time reviewing is where was I? Where have I been? What happened in these places? That's partly why it's top of mind for me.
Does that app also remind you of what you have written about in the past so you don't duplicate
It
your
does.
efforts?
It does actually. It lets you record where you've published life stories so that you're not duplicating that process.
Oh, that's very cool. You call yourself a socially anxious introvert, and I think that that's a pretty accurate handle. But is that something you've always kind of tagged on yourself? Is that something you've ever tried to get away from, or do you just live with it and deal with it?
That's a good question. I never thought of myself as socially anxious, maybe, or introvert either until the last 10 years or so. I grew up gravitating towards athletics, performance, theater, comedy, but it was much later in life that I realized all of that was an attempt to compensate for how anxious and shy I've always been underneath. And that's just something that's not something that was in my awareness that was all basically a cover up, a way to try and appear confident It's just in the probably the last 10 years of my life that's become apparent.
So do you think that because we're made up of mostly water, that everybody is actually trying to compensate for the things that they feel or sense that they're not great at, and so they're always trying to do something that makes them feel better?
Well, I'm fascinated by this, by your reference to us being mostly water. And I mean, if you lived with that in your awareness all the time, that you're mostly water, I think we'd become insecure about a lot of things. Hey, I'm just mostly water here. That's kind of a disconcerting thought, but very funny.
Uh-huh. So how does someone with that description of a socially anxious introvert end up making a living as a performer and speaker? Is that just
I
because you
know.
had to kind of fight through?
I think it is part of like, there was somebody I was listening to being interviewed recently who said, how did it go? It's this really cool phrase. He said something like, your highest contribution in life is right next to the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Something like that. And I thought that was really intriguing because it seems as though when we get into these areas where we're almost gifted with these big challenges in life, and by gift, I mean, when we're given a big challenge, it demands that we rise up internally to meet that challenge. And in the process of rising up to meet it, we develop competencies or skills that are exaggerated above and beyond what other people would have to produce. And I think that's very true for me. Like that sense of feeling like, oh, I'm going to mess this up. This isn't going to go well once I'm in front of people or when I'm interacting with people. That demanded a level of practice and preparation that for me turned into, okay, how do I become as a performer captivating and engaging and thoughtful as a speaker, like, and all that stuff. I spent a lot of time practicing when I'm not with people so that hopefully it'll go well when I am with them.
If I meet you on the street or someone meets you on the street and they ask you, so what do you do? How do you deal with that question? How do you describe yourself?
Well, so there's a lot of different things that I do for work, but one of the things that's been my primary source of income is the last 20 years or so, I've been doing corporate events, but as a presenter at corporate events. And the way I start those presentations is I dress identically to the serving staff at a five-star hotel. Most of these conferences and meetings are at high-end resorts. So I'm at a Ritz-Carlton or a Hilton or, or Gaylord property. And I go in and I dress identically to the serving staff at the function, and I pose as a waiter who gets more and more odd, eccentric, and inept over the course of the meal. So by the end of the meal, all the guests at this corporate event are in whispered conversation about how the hell did this guy ever get his job and how is he keeping it? So that's the lead in to what I do now as a corporate speaker, entertainer, performer, presenter. But that is probably my favorite way of telling people what I do for a living, which is I am both the worst and the highest paid waiter that has ever existed on the planet. And that has been my job for well over a decade now.
That's such a brilliant shtick. I love the way that sounds. So during an event, then, are you spilling drinks and stumbling and bumping into people? What exactly are you doing during the events when you're dressed as a waiter?
Yeah, it's very, very fun. It's such a dynamic piece of theater. First of all, it's theater, obviously, but the guests don't know that the theater is happening. They think this is for real. And so my job is to come across as inept, eccentric, clumsy, odd as I possibly can without breaking anything, ruining anyone's meal, spilling things on people. So it's all a perceived level of oddity. If I were to actually, soil clothing or ruin food, they wouldn't let me into these places. So I've had to learn how to create this impression of somebody who the guests just feel like this guy is completely inept, incompetent. I've had to learn how to create that impression. So I'll do things like go around the tables with a water pitcher and fill the pitchers from a height of about 3 feet, just trickling the water into the glass until it's so full it forms a meniscus on the surface. I mean, it's literally bulging over the rim. And then I just say, is that enough water for you? And
you just won the word of the day prize. So meniscus is our word of the day today. Good one.
nice. Yeah, it's a good one. So I do these things that are just make people feel like, what is this guy's deal? I'll go and take their, when the entrees are served, I'll wait for the guests to take a few bites, and then I'll go and try and switch their plates saying they got the wrong one, even though it's the exact same entree, or drop silverware on the floor and get down on my hands and knees, crawling under the table to pick up the silverware. It's just all this stuff but I'm playing it totally straight. Like I'm really trying my best, but I'm nervous and kind of clueless. And so that's the setup for the reveal that, hey, I'm actually your keynote speaker, at which point everyone is like, oh no.
Oh, that's great. Now, do you have to work with the staffers ahead of time so they know that this guy on the floor who's acting like a clown is okay?
I do, because the first time I did this gig, I didn't know yet about how to set it up properly. I did it by accident. It happened by accident that I discovered it one day. And then when I started doing it on repeat, because it was so much fun to do, the first time I did it again was at a Hyatt hotel right here in Vancouver, actually. And I went in and I started the waiter routine, and two of the other staff members grabbed me and were dragging me out of the room because they thought I was high or something, because I hadn't clued them in. So since that time, I now meet with the banquet captain and the staff before every event, and I explain, hey, everybody, my name's Rick. Here's what I'm going to be doing. Here's how you play along. And I have to train them because they'll stand there and they'll just laugh out loud watching what I'm doing. And the servers, the banquet servers, absolutely love it when I do this, because I get to do to guests what every banquet server wish they could do to guests. When you get corporate attendees at events like this, as a waiter, you're invisible. You're nobody. You don't count. You don't even rate as a human being. You're just like, everyone's there just feeling entitled and yes, serve me my stuff. And so it's quite the comeuppance for these servers to watch me punk the corporate guests. It's a lot of fun.
That's great. Take me to the moment right before the reveal. How does that happen? Does someone who's introducing you know how to do this, or what takes place right then?
Yeah, well, what happens is, so it builds over the course of the meal. So by the end, I'm tripping and full pratfall, tripping and falling with stuff that makes a lot of noise. And so by the end, people are really like, okay, something has to be done here. And then shortly after that, I'll come out on stage and go to the mic looking terrified, like I've never spoken before in public in my life. And I go to the mic like I'm going rogue, and I'm in front of the whole room. And once people see me on stage, there can be 400 people talking in the room. And once they see me get on stage, it all just goes absolutely hush silent, because they're wondering, what in the world is this happening now? And I go to the mic and I go close to the mic, and then I'm like, excuse me. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. My banquet manager just asked me to come out and apologize because, it's like, it was my first day at this hotel, and I've had a bunch of first days at other hotels, but and so I go on like this. I'm just kind of pretending to apologize. I'm stammering and stumbling. And I do that for a couple of minutes, and people are thinking, oh my God, this is so weird that this even happened, but now they're having him apologize. And so I milk that for a couple minutes, and then I put up a photo on in my PowerPoint on the big screens. There's a hidden camera photo of me pouring water for somebody whose jaw is just hanging on the floor. And then I ask them, how many of you are aware that you've been part of a 60-minute social experiment? And that's the moment where it's like 3 seconds of silence, and then the whole room bursts into laughter and they're relieved laughter. They're like, oh my God, thank God this was an act.
So that you're able to overcome all the prior behaviors in just a very brief moment in time.
Exactly.
Oh, I like that.
I actually do this little NPS score. You know what NPS is? Net Promoter Score.
Tell us what that is.
Yeah, well, it's a Net Promoter Score. So you'll see it. Everyone's responded to these. How likely are you to recommend our products and services to a friend or a family member? So an NPS score measures the likeliness of a referral. And so I do this little exercise for these corporate groups, especially leadership groups I talk to a lot. And I say, how many people would have been likely to recommend me as a waiter prior to my reveal? And of course, no hand goes up. And then I say, how many people would now recommend me knowing the background of who I really was? And every hand goes up. And I make the point, when we get to know people's whole story, when we understand the full context of who somebody is, our affinity with them goes through the roof. We feel connected. We feel compassionate, empathetic, forgiving. And so it's a really neat exercise because, like you just pointed out, literally from 1 minute to the next, there's an entire reframe of opinion, judgment, and connection with me. And so that's a lead in for me to what I talk about a lot in my keynotes, which is the power of storytelling and of story. Because when you start really telling your full, real story to others, that the capacity and the chance of really connecting deeply with people is increased exponentially.
I can see how that would really work for you as far as word of mouth and getting future gigs.
It's all referral. I don't have any ad spend, and I've made a living doing this for over a decade. It's all word of mouth. And I say that to people. I say, how many people will walk out of here today and mention what happened here today to somebody else who wasn't here? And every hand goes up. So literally everyone in the room becomes is a marketing team, becomes my ambassador because of the story that is behind what just happened.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing to be able to get that kind of word of mouth without an agent and without ad spends, like you just mentioned, to be able to do comedy and speaking performances like this.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's a really, I have the best job in the world.
And it's all been yourself your entire life. You never really worked for anyone else, have you?
No, I haven't. Although behind the scenes, there's a tremendous amount of conversation, coordination, collaboration that goes on for me with the C-suite of these companies who hire me. There's design calls. I'm asking about the attendees, who's there, what are the challenges you're facing as a company, and my keynotes are always tailored to their needs. So I'm working with the production team at the hotel, the banquet team, the company themselves. So there's a lot of collaboration there, and much more so than I was a street performer for 10 years, where that was purely just, I go out, it's just me, do my show, go home.
So even though you're coordinating with C-suite and all of the people behind the scenes, it pretty much still rotates around your storytelling ability, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did I read that you fell off a 12-foot tall unicycle in China?
I don't know where you read that, but it's true.
Is that true?
I have so much stuff I've put out there, little bits of stories here and there. So that's very curious. You ran across that fact. It was actually in Shenzhen, which is part of China, but a more commercialized area of China. So it was in Shenzhen. I was taken over there by a man who was producing a fashion show. It was this collaborative fashion show with models from Canada and models from China. And they were doing this hybrid fashion show, and they needed a basically a halftime kind of entertainer to perform at this fashion show. The producer found me here in Canada and asked if I would go. And I said, sure. I was in my mid-20s. It was a really cool opportunity. And I went over to do this event. And what happened was, so there were two performances. This was happening twice. And in the first one, because everyone who's there speaks either Mandarin or Cantonese, what happened though, they provided me a translator, because when I do my unicycle act, I'm actually using volunteers out of the audience to get on top of this 12-foot unicycle. So I put a rope over the top. There are 4 men on one side, 4 on the other, 4 in the middle holding the unicycle. And I do a tightrope walk up the rope to the top of the unicycle.
Oh, wow.
I have to give instruction to all these volunteers. They have to like follow what I'm saying to do in order for this to work. So because no one there spoke English, I had a translator who was translating to the guests, to the volunteers that I got out of the audience. And the translator was new to the area, and she translated into the wrong language. And I can't remember which way it went now. In Shenzhen, either most people spoke Mandarin and she translated in Cantonese, or they spoke Cantonese and she translated into Mandarin. I can't remember which way it went. But so the people who I was trying to instruct were not understanding actually what they were being told to do. And by the time I got to the top of the unicycle, the guys who were holding it ran off prematurely. And I wound up falling off the unicycle at that point and having to regather them. It was a total hilarious calamity that fortunately I survived.
Did the audience dig their experience watching that?
I think they were just, I remember the stadium, the stadium in Shenzhen had, I don't know, maybe 20,000 people. I don't know how many people it holds, a lot. Wow. And yeah. I remember looking into the sea of faces and just seeing a ton of confusion. I think this was just so completely out of the box for anything. I mean, this was 30 years ago as well. So almost 40 years ago. And they were just confused. People were just like, what is this? What is going on here?
Right. Another thing I read about you is that at age 50, you pulled off a standing backflip. Is that something you're still doing, or tell us about that? What was that all about? Was that a metaphor for reinvention for yourself?
That was just a way of, I wanted to raise some money for a local charity. It's actually, it was basically like a homeless shelter here in Vancouver. And I had been thinking about trying to revive this stunt I did, this acrobatic stunt I did earlier in my life, in my 20s and 30s, a standing backflip. And I was thinking, as we all do when we age, we're like, we want to try and preserve some of our youthfulness, our accomplishments. And I'd been thinking, I would really like to be able to do this standing backflip again before I'm too old to. And so that was at 50. I decided, what if I try and do this again, and I'll do it publicly. I'll promote it and build up to a public display of it, or public attempt. And I'll get donations. I'll get pledges to try and do this. So that's what that was. And it was in my street performing days. So I promoted an outdoor street show, and at the end I was going to do a standing backflip. And I barely made it. I made it enough not to break my neck, but it wasn't a full feet to feet. I got to my feet, but I kind of fell forward at the end. So I wouldn't call it, if I were trying to do it for the Guinness Book of World Records, they probably wouldn't have given it to me, because I didn't fully come to a landing position without falling forward.
Yeah, sounds like you did pretty well.
I'll take it. I'll take that assessment.
So yeah, really, I think at the core of that question, was that in any way for you a metaphor for reinvention of your life, or was that just another kind of bit that you wanted to pull off for fun and for charity?
It definitely fits in the context of my value system, which is the consistent necessity to stretch outside of one's comfort zone or set of beliefs about what's possible or what isn't possible. That type of thinking has always been of great appeal to me. And I've found moving contrary or acting contrary to the assumptions about what isn't possible to be useful my whole life. And so that was a big stretch. That idea of, oh gosh, that's a pretty crazy idea. I haven't done a standing backflip in 20 years, but, or 15 years at that point, but could I revive this? And so, yeah, it fits my worldview, which is that we far vastly underestimate our capacity and our potential all the time in favor of comfort and safety, both physically, emotionally, socially. And I believe that testing those boundaries makes for a better life.
You know, the way that you just put that, I think it's really important for people to know that you're somebody who grew up and experienced a year of panic attacks and that you can overcome that kind of inner behavior or turmoil. Tell us about that particular year that is discussed in your bio and so on like that. How did you navigate that season of panic and how does it inform your work at this moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking about that. So the panic attacks were just recent. That was just last year,
Oh, wow.
which again is testimony to, like, we're never done, you know, there's never a top end to where you're like, okay, I'm past my fears and insecurities or hangups, or there's always another layer that we can meet with a desire to expand further our sense of who we are, or what we're capable of, or our capacity. And the panic attacks came about because I started this online writing community. And even though I've been an entertainer and performer all my life, and I perform and present to rooms full of 1,000 or 2,000 people, that has become not an issue for me. I've no problem doing that. I started this writing community, which for the first time was putting me in a position where I was signing up to be a leader of a group of people with continuity over time in a domain that I haven't led before around writing, communication mastery. And for some reason, the commitment to do that just panicked me. It brought up, and it was very fascinating for me to see that agreeing to lead 35 people in a 1 year commitment for a specific kind of growth and development triggered me into full on feeling like, oh my God, they're going to find out I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a total imposter. I've never done this before. I don't know how to lead. I don't know how to run a company like this. Even with the small scale that it was at, it fully triggered full on panic for me. And so that was fascinating. Like I was as challenged. It was an incredibly challenging time, but I was also fascinated by it. Like purely from a human, psychological, physiological human experiment on myself to see, wow, look at how difficult this is. And I made it through. And it was one of the most challenging periods of my life. It was, I don't know if, I'm sure some people who are watching this have had panic attacks, and I never have before in my whole life. I've never had a full-on panic attack. It's not a head thing. I always thought, oh, panic attack, it's like something going on in your brain. It is, but it's so physiological. You literally feel like I'm dying. Like you feel like this is it. I'm on my way out. And so it really got my attention. It was a big thing to work through. And but now I'm on the other side now I'm leading this community, and there's no sense of panic anymore, which is pretty notable.
When you were going through the panic attacks related to starting this community, and I want you to speak a little bit about the community in a minute, was it because you were trying to structure a commercially viable online business? And because the money aspect, I'm just wondering if that's partly what contributed to this. It's like, are they going to get bang for their buck? Am I charging too much? Whatever the thoughts
Sure.
might have been related to a commercial enterprise.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the money aspect was definitely a good measure of the stressor. That was part of it. But even without the financial aspect of it, the claim that, hey, I can lead you in this thing. Like I'm someone who is going to deliver a result to you, something of value. The stand for that was also, even if it had been completely divorced from any monetary exchange, I think that still would have given me some unease. But the combination of the two definitely did.
Right. And now this community, tell us a little bit about it. How does it work? What do people get? What do you give? Do you blend in the fact that you've got some 10, 15,000 hours of meditation in your background and history? How does that help running this community?
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of big moving parts in my life. It's really interesting how, and I'm sure you relate to this, at least to some extent, the older you get, the more you're drawing on these life phases that wind up being futile in your whatever it is that you're doing next. You're now cross-pollinating old skills, capacities, experiences, and blending them into something that you're offering, which has more to it than just a younger person who's coming to something without a lot of life experience. So yes, for sure. I mean, these many years of meditation practice, which earlier in my life, I was very focused on formal sitting practice, spiritual practices. And that combined with the connection with people like we're doing now, and you're doing such a wonderful job of the questions that you're asking. You did your research, you're asking great questions. So we're having a conversation, which is, it's interesting. And although I'm not letting you talk enough, but, I should have some questions for you. But so Right-Hearted as a writing community is based on the premise that what I say about writing is that in order to do our best writing, we need to be living a story-worthy life. So if you want to write things that are of interest, writing from a background of direct life experience where you're actually talking about things that you have actually been through, things you know about, things that you have domain expertise in, all of that, your best writing is always going to be based on your best living. And by best living, I don't mean necessarily things that have been successful. It could be things that you tried that really didn't go well. But life experience is the ground of great writing, I believe. And so much of what we do in Right-Hearted is helping people to get past a very common attitude or thinking where people actually want to hide who they are. They want to talk about something over here that they can talk about at arm's length, or, technical expertise, or other people, or give opinions on other people's work, versus being authentic, vulnerable, transparent about who they are and what experiences they've had as a human being. And so Right-Hearted is a process of coming together and drawing each other out in conversation so that we become more confident and more competent at being articulate about who we are, how we came to this point in our lives. Because ultimately, that's the most valuable thing we have to share with the rest of the world, because nobody else has lived our life. There's nobody else who's been through what we've been through and has the perspective that we now have. So that's kind of the contextual basis for what we do in Right-Hearted. And the aim is to help people to write more consistently and more courageously than they ever have before, and to support each other to publish that material.
It
But it's
sounds to me like it's a combination of artistry of writers, along with maybe a little bit of a drip of confession and communication and therapy. So it sounds like a lot's going on inside that group.
There is a lot going on. As a result, it hasn't been easy to describe. And it's when you come in and it's the people who are gathered there, the quality of attention, presence, empathy, generosity, it's extraordinary. It has turned into an extraordinary group. And what happens as a result, because it is such a safe space for us, it allows people to see things about themselves, discover strengths that haven't been fully acknowledged or received by ourselves, about ourselves. There's a real, it's quite revelatory for people. And so it's a safe space where these capacities become apparent to us. And then we have the grounding and the backup in the community to brave showing those in public. And the result for a lot of people have been in the program is that the stuff they're writing and the feedback they're getting now from the general public is just extraordinary. Because, I mean, you know, some of these people, Larry, for example, Larry's somebody who just started with Right-Hearted.
Yeah,
And he's now writing these pieces that will make you laugh or weep, sometimes in the same piece.
right.
And, very similar style to yours as well. Your stuff is very similar to that, just very, very fun and engaging, but also poignant at times. So that's the goal, is to really help people come into themselves in a way that they've got the confidence to share that publicly.
What percentage of the people in Right-Hearted have Substack accounts where they write for the general population? And how
Well,
many of them would
all
you
of
say?
them,
Almost
all of
all of
them.
them?
Yeah, no, that's how we all do our outreach with our writing. Everybody who's in Right-Hearted has a Substack account.
Okay, I did not realize that.
Yeah.
How many of them do you think are pursuing a career as an author for commercial success?
That's a good question. There's a couple people who are writing fiction. The majority of the group are nonfiction. So the majority of the group are people who are functioning in some capacity as a coach, counselor, guide, mentor, expert. Jeannie's another example. Jeannie has her animal communication project and the donkey project.
Right, the
She,
human animal connection, I
the
think, is what it's
human
called.
animal connection. Yes. And so her expertise is in with animals and supporting people to have a better relationship to their own pets and animals. And so she is using writing as the vehicle to reach people who need that information. So most people are in that category. So they're not looking to just write and make money directly from writing, which, as you know, is a tall order
Oh,
nowadays.
yeah.
That's a very few and far between. Like, there just are very few people who are doing just that. Most people are using writing as a means of reaching an audience to convey another skill or some kind of expertise or information that they have to offer.
Perhaps there's a large part of catharsis in writing also.
Absolutely. I think we all deep down, every one of us want to be seen. And however many layers of mask or fear or disguise or hesitation we might have, we still have that longing. We want to be known by others. And I think that's why writing draws so many of us. Many people have a love-hate, push-pull relationship with writing, especially with writing publicly, because on one hand, it offers that promise of being known and seen. And on the other hand, it offers the potential for rejection, judgment, or just being ignored, all of which are painful. So it's quite a crucible the whole writing, the whole idea of writing, and everyone who wants to do it, but shies away from it, or then braves it, or then does and gives up. I mean, it's a fascinating realm for us as human beings, the whole writing. It's, it's very cathartic. It's demanding in a way, because you really have to do some work internally with yourself, even to think about being visible in that way.
There's so many different kinds of personalities of people out there, Rick. You could meet someone at a party and they could be just the most quiet and internal person from your perception. And then the other part of their life could be as this incredible writer where they get out all the stuff that you cannot see in the
Yeah.
party atmosphere. So that's
Yeah.
what's so curious to me, is that people can be just so completely different, and or maybe so completely the same as they are when you meet them face to face.
Yeah, absolutely. That is
So
fascinating.
here we are. It's the day after Thanksgiving 2025 right now. Uh, I'm going to ask you about food in a little while, but I want you to make a prediction for me, okay? Our
Okay.
show's going to be out in a week or two, probably around December 7th or so.
Okay.
How many Thanksgiving related stories are going to come out of your group? I want you to predict that now, because in a week
Oh,
or two, when the show hits, we'll see if you were right.
oh, that's a very interesting question. Huh. Well, there's
You can't
been
count my
one.
story.
There's okay. There's already been one. Someone published a Thanksgiving story in advance of a past memory of a Thanksgiving. So I know of one. I'll say there's going to be four more.
Okay,
That's my guess.
very good. Do you have one up your sleeve?
I don't actually. That hasn't been on my radar to post a Thanksgiving story, but now it is. I'm trying to
Uh,
think of.
no charge.
I I did have Thanksgiving. I had a Thanksgiving dinner in a Denny's restaurant in just outside of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, because I was driving across country. I was in my mid 20s and I was going to surprise my parents by driving back to Arkansas and showing up for Thanksgiving. And my truck broke down. That's another great story that goes with the truck breakdown as well. But anyway, my truck broke down. I had towed to the nearest town, but all the garages were closed because it was Thanksgiving. So I spent 2 days in a hotel waiting for the garage to open so they could get the parts to repair my truck. And my Thanksgiving dinner was by myself in a Denny's restaurant. I was in my mid 20s. So that was a
That's
memorable one.
sad. That's sad. It reminds me, I once spent a Thanksgiving in Indianapolis at the Holiday Inn all by myself. It was like total sadness.
There
It was
you
the same
go.
kind of thing for you, I bet.
Well, but it was very cool because I very distinctly remember my server, the waitress, was so incredibly kind and so attentive. Like the connection with that one person and the way she was with me, her manner, her presence, her warmth, I will never forget, because she went out of her way. I think I probably told her my story of being stranded, but she went out of her way to really connect with me and treat me well, and I'll never forget that.
Did she slip you a little extra pumpkin pie?
Probably. I think there was some kind of freebie in there. I don't
Right.
remember for sure. I just remember how kind she was.
Oh, that's funny. Uh,
Yeah.
so now that we brought up Thanksgiving, what have you eaten today, and what did you have for Thanksgiving yesterday?
Well, I'm in Canada, so
Oh,
Canadian Thanksgiving is a month earlier.
are you Canadian?
I'm dual citizen.
Dual citizen.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you really didn't celebrate then yesterday, is what you're saying.
Well, my wife often cooks for us in a way that my son likes to say that we get restaurant grade food at home, which is a pretty high praise from the 16-year-old for their mother's cooking. But my wife is a wonderful cook and she's always doing wonderful meals for us. So we had we had a taco spread last night, delicious taco spread, mango chutney and chopped cabbage and chicken and rice and all sorts of nice fillings for a taco. So that's what we had for dinner last night on Thanksgiving here in Canada.
Yum. Mango chutney for a taco spread is way out there, but it sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So being in Canada means that your American part doesn't really take place when you're there, but had you been down in the US, you would have celebrated Thanksgiving. How does that work?
We're fairly close to the border here, and my parents live just over the border in Washington State, as well as my brother. So on Sunday, we're having my extended family up here for a U.S. Thanksgiving celebration.
Okay. And will wifey be cooking?
Yes, it's kind of a
Uh-huh.
collaborative effort. A number of us will be involved, but she's going to
Oh,
do the turkey.
okay. So let's cut to today. What have you eaten today?
Yogurt, frozen cherries, banana, and pumpkin seeds. That is what I have for breakfast every day. Fruit and yogurt and
Okay, the
nuts.
pumpkin seeds, you kind of keeping the Thanksgiving energy alive there, right? There's a connection,
Tiny one. Little.
tiny bit. So has food found its way into any of your storytelling?
Not much. I mean, obviously food is a big part of life. So it's not that food is absent by any stretch. And I have some fun, couple of fun food stories, but I'm not a foodie I'm not a food centered person in the sense of all the stuff I do. Food is like, how can I make it as healthy, tasty, but also efficient as possible so I can get on with all the things that I need to do?
Oh my God, that sounds like a major imperfection to me.
I think it might be different if I weren't married to someone who actually puts such loving attention on food. I enjoy wonderful food. And I bet that if that weren't present in my life, I'd be putting a little more effort into it myself. But
Huh, interesting. Now, Rick, I wanted to ask you, which piece of writing have you ever done in your entire life that feels closest to your heart?
this
He has it handy. This is cool.
I do. Well, I keep it on my desk because I read it often. This is a book I wrote.
I'm experiencing a whiteout moment here.
Yeah. So I wrote this book. It's called The Unbranded Self. And you can see it's a 480-page book, and it's an experience. It's basically a meditation. And the book has no copyright, no title page, no author, no title. And the idea is that, and there are blank pages in the book as well. So to answer your question, this book was written in a period of about 30 hours by me. I sat down and it just downloaded. And it was at a period particularly where I was doing a lot of meditating. And it descended. It came to be a meditation. Here's a project, write this book. And I sat down and I wrote this in about 30 hours. And within a week, I had this in my hand. I wrote it and I did very minimal editing, and I took it to a printer and I had these made. I only have like 100 of these. And this is the writing that I am most close to. It most represents what's in my heart. And if there were anything if someone said, I want to read the thing that you most love that you've written in your whole life, and I've written a lot of stuff, I would send them to that project.
Okay. Do you think that possibly in future generations, when they dig up what Rick Lewis was all about, they'll discover in that book that looks blank to the naked eye that maybe there's a lot of invisible ink in there?
Well, I hope people will discover it, but there's no way to trace it to me because there's not a single mention of my ID in this.
You're busted now, though, because it's on here.
I am. I was going to keep it completely a secret. And I did that for a while, but then I decided it's all right. It's okay that I let people know that I wrote it. It's still the integrity of the project itself, the concept book, remains.
So do you think that your approach in life is really more about improvement, or humor or heartfelt words. Could you break that down into any particular direction or path that you're looking to be known for or to be proud of?
Uh, I'd say it's summarized by connection, the desire for connection, for sure.
Yeah.
And then humor, or whatever the genre is that becomes necessary in the moment to facilitate connection, is what I would lean toward. And ideally, we're skilled in many styles and forms of communication, because that gives us more in the toolbox to create that connection in the moments that count.
So, Rick, if you were to take a look at what's next for you, how far in advance do you plan out your future?
Um, well, I guess there are many different aspects of future. Um, Financially, I try and keep an eye on what I'm doing that's got commercial potential. My speaking work is probably the bulk of that, but the online stuff I'm doing with the online businesses. So I'm always putting a lot of irons in the fire entrepreneurially. And since I've been an entrepreneur now, I've not been on anybody's payroll in over 50 years. So that's a pretty cool accomplishment. I like that.
Right on. I could probably ditto that for myself. So that's a
Cool.
very, very cool thing.
Yeah, it is cool.
Yeah.
And you learn over time how to manage that flow of how many different things you need to have in on the go, and what percentage of those are likely to produce some sort
Mm-hmm.
of monetary support. So I'm always kind of, the planning for me, I think more takes the form of, how would I say it? Like abundance activity, like just knowing I can trust, if I'm following kind of an inner sense of call, an inner enlivenment, an inner excitement about wanting to do something or try something. If I just keep doing a lot of that, enough of that's going to pan out that I'm going to be able to make a living from it. And that's what's happened over the 50 years. I've never made money doing something that isn't enjoyable to me, or isn't aligned with something that feels alive and part of my purpose for being here. And I think that's possible for most people. And I think a lot of people shy away from that. But in terms of planning, I tend to more just follow that sense of what feels alive, what feels exciting, what feels profitable in a sense of like humanness. That's kind of how I plan, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think that for folks like you who haven't really taken a paycheck from anyone else in that many decades, that you've suffered a lot of failures, because how could you not? And that's how you get to the next point, the next stage. So tripping up is a big part of the life of being able to get to a successful point, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Tripping up a lot. I've
right.
tried, as I'm sure you have as well. We try a lot of things that don't work.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's that wonderful security for folks who want to collect the paycheck, and then there are the rest of us, like you and me, who, it was always more important to do our own thing, no matter what.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
does this work for you, the podcast? How does it fit into your ecosystem of, is this something you do as a labor of love, or is there a way that it supports you in your livelihood?
You'd have to define what the word livelihood means. But for the most part, this is my social experience. This is
Mm,
my life. This is how I reach and reveal and share and communicate with the world. It is in no way a commercial enterprise at all. This is just a labor of love all the way.
right. Well, thank you for inviting me to be part of your set of what you love.
Exactly. Tell us a little bit more about where people can get a hold of you or see, you know, about the right-hearted or anything that you're involved with if people want to follow up on this.
Sure. ricklewis.co is where people can see hidden camera footage of me doing the waiter routine.
Oh, I like
So
that.
that's a fun resource. So you can go see my trailer of me doing the waiter act there. That's Rick Lewis, but co, not .com, just .co. Righthearted.com is the landing page for the Righthearted community. So you can send an email to rick at allmystories.com. And then honestlyhuman.com is my Substack, where I tell
Right.
my own stories.
Yeah, no, that's a really fun place to be.
Thank you.
So, Rick, do me a favor, using all your improv skills, your comic abilities, your heartfelt connection to people stuff.
Oh
Do a
no.
live promo right here.
I've
Tell people who you are and who you're with and what show you're on and your experience and whatever else, and we'll play it at the beginning of the show.
Okay. So, hey, everybody, this is Rick Lewis coming to you from Matthew Gray's podcast. And Matthew and I just had the most fabulous one-sided conversation I think I've ever had, because he's such a good listener and such a wonderful presence that he had me just talking his ear off for an hour with some fun stories and some really interesting things that I think you should join us for.
Perfect. You know what is on the floor right next to me? My ear that you just talked off. Thank you so much for joining me today on 50 Tastes of Gray, Rick.
Thank you, Matthew.
I hope you had a good time.
I did.
So would you please say aloha to everyone?
Aloha, everybody.